Welcome to Bunch Formation. My name is Chris Vanini, and I'm doing this podcast from my parents' basement.
True blogger spirit, Chris. I am David Ubben. I narrowly avoided a mudslide this week, an actual mudslide, and also had one of the great pancakes of our time.
We're going to get to that pancake in a minute. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is part one of what's going to kind of be a two-part show on this Friday, the day it's coming out. Part two is just going to be about college football 26 gameplay, which has been embargoed for later in the day. So we wanted to get this first part of this episode out right away for people. And we figured we'd split it into two. And for the video game people, we see the numbers. We know what you're looking for. We're going to leave that one as a standalone show. Also means we may not have an episode early next week, but we do have an interview planned midweek with a college football referee. I think people have a lot of enjoyment out of, but we will get to that later. On this episode, we're going to talk about the college football playoff drama where David was. Talk about the SEC and Big Ten being at odds once again. We're also going to talk about some comments from Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia.
The GOAT.
Never one to shy away from anything. He's taken the Big Ten to task. He's taking Tennessee. That's going to be interesting to get into. But first, David, tell me about this pancake.
Listen, anybody who's listened to me or followed me for any amount of time knows I take breakfast seriously. I would say I'm a breakfast enthusiast. I discovered this place called Liberty House in Asheville this weekend. Sourdough buttermilk pancake. Obviously, buttermilk, a frequent player in the pancake game.
Yes.
Sourdough's a newcomer. That's a curveball that I did not see coming. But this pancake, we could put a photo in the show notes. Maybe we can add something later. But basically, this pancake, I don't think they're cooking this thing on a griddle. They're cooking it literally in like a pan. I think they're baking it. I'm looking for a recipe. If you're familiar with the Liberty House pancake in Asheville, please let me know because I'm dying to find this recipe and make this at my home. I'm sure it's not super complicated, but it was unbelievable. Super crispy edges, really soft inside, like a little shell basically, and then they put like a big hunk of butter with a little bit of sea salt on it. Like, it was unbelievable. I'm going to be thinking about this pancake for years. The next time I go to Asheville, I'm getting one.
It was basically based on the picture you and Ralph showed me. It's basically a really thick pancake, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was stretching the definition of what a pancake is.
Well, it was in a but it was made in a pan. Is that not where pancake comes from?
I mean, I think the majority these days of pancakes, I think a much higher percentage are being made on a griddle.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a lot of pancake. Because here's the thing: if you make a pancake on a griddle, you can do. I mean, I have a griddle, so we have a stovetop, we have a gas stove. I can do about 3 or 4 on my little flat top griddle.
Okay.
But like if you're going in a pan, you can do 1, maybe 2 small ones. Nobody's making pancakes in an actual pan these days. They're doing it on a griddle. But this one, I mean, it was probably like a ½ inch thick. It was unbelievable. So
that is true.
Shout out to the Liberty House in Asheville. You have redefined for me what a pancake can be, and I love you for it.
David and Ralph were texting our group chat nonstop about this pancake. I mean, frankly, it was the most notable thing to come out of this playoff meeting.
It really was, legitimately. There's a reason why we're starting with this and not a playoff plan, because that pancake did more for my general demeanor and mood in Asheville, which, you know, it was a long trip, I'll be honest with you, than it did than anything that the playoff did or anything that we uncover anything anybody said. Shout out to that pancake. You saved the trip.
We will probably reference the Asheville pancakes in the show moving forward. If you haven't, please subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to podcasts. Tell your friends about it. Like and subscribe on YouTube. We are there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of these trophies from my youth hockey career here in the background, up here in Michigan, up here in suburban Detroit, where I am from. Check out the show notes for timestamps on various things we're going to talk about in the show. Send your emails and feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. And again, we're Bunch Formation everywhere on social media. And if you give us a 5-star review, we will read them on the show. And once again, we got a couple more. So thank you to the folks who send those in. First one from Thomas J2, who says, "The boys are back." Quote, "This podcast is a great mix of the weird and beautiful of college football. Vanini and Ubben cover the sport in all its glory, keeping listeners updated and never taking themselves or the game too seriously.
These are my favorite reviews, Chris, because these are people that understand the show and see the sport the way that we do. College football is it's a big deal. It is. It is a very serious thing. It's also preposterously stupid. And every Saturday, I'm gonna see something that has me doubled over in laughter most of the time. Not every week are we gonna get a 3rd and goal on your own 14, but we're gonna get something close. And I appreciate the people that sort of get what we're going for here. That excites me. I love seeing that. Thomas J too. I'm glad you get the show. Thank you.
And look, we're opening the show talking about a pancake at the playoff meeting because that's how the sport works. Another review from LR Franco, pumped for the pod, says, quote, love the show, guys being dudes. We're getting a lot of good feedback on the Remember Some Guys section. It's something I'd kind of wanted to do for a while. And then when you and I kind of did our own thing, I was like, this is a good opportunity to do it because I saw this TikTok the other day. I don't remember if I sent it to you or not, but it's like
you did, but I couldn't get it to play because I don't have TikTok and I didn't want to download the app.
David,
so
David does not have. David is on Twitter, kind of on Blue Sky, and that's it.
Well,
He's
no. So I'm not going to get into it, but my recent reporting deep dive has bullied me into creating an Instagram account, but solely to contact people and to see things that I need to do for reporting. I probably will not be participating on there, but I do have like 7 followers. So shout out.
So the video is there's these girls just dancing and singing a Michelle Branch song together with the prompt, what is the equivalent of this for men? And then it cuts to a guy who basically like, you know, when you're at like the bar with your guys and you're just naming athletes and someone drops a Kenji Jojima on you, that's what this is. That's what this is for guys. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. That is the point of the segment, which we will have at the end of the show. Remember Some Guys. It's fun. Literally. I'm glad we put it at the end of the show. People are enjoying it. Fun stuff like that. Guys,
I'm not even going to out myself and say I don't know who Kenji Jojima is.
Baseball player.
Well, that explains it.
That explains it because David does not know anything about baseball. So, with that opening out of the way, we are going to now jump into the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper. Because it's garbage.
Before the playoff stuff, real quick, an update on stuff we talked about on the last episode. Single transfer portal window, not yet. Oversight committee didn't even really talk about it. It's unclear exactly who's going to handle that, but conversations remain ongoing. The oversight committee did decide to recommend the D1 Council deny Sacramento State's FCS to FBS waiver. That will be decided by the council later this month. Basically, the reason is normally you need a conference invitation to move up from FCS to FBS. The only one who didn't was Liberty, but Liberty had an insane amount of money, amazing facilities. They were able to do it and eventually got into a conference. Sacramento State is not in that spot. We talked about it. They have promises of certain money, but they don't have the infrastructure in place. They also announced that they're leaving the Big Sky for the Big West in everything but football, and football is going to be an FCS independent. So they're making another push publicly to try to get that FBS waiver. I am very skeptical it's going to happen. We will see with that. Dave, did you have any thoughts on those two real quick?
I mean, I'm tracking the Sac State stuff because I think it's interesting. And then hiring away Brendan Marion, who's been in the mix for a lot of different jobs, was super interesting. The go-go offense obviously carried UNLV to not that far from the playoff last year. Now, we're not going to be able to see it very much because Sac State, I don't know what the Big Sky TV deal is, but I imagine it's a lot of ESPN Plus, if that. So it's the Sac State stuff is interesting. They're basically just trying to, I don't want to say bluff, but like push their way into major college football. And it's not that simple. Liberty has kind of already found that out. And now Sac State is sort of attempting to do the same, but Liberty has money. Sac State has pledges of money contingent on Pac-12 entrance, which is, I could pledge $100 if Sac State gets into the SEC, but that doesn't mean that much.
Yeah, it's the fact that the Pac-12 is not going to add them in the Mountain West. Did not add them tells you kind of what everybody else kind of feels about it. So if anything happens on the front, we'll see. But it's kind of a lot of talk and a lot of bluster. And I understand why. It'd be a big deal to get it, but it's frankly not there yet.
I mean, people care. People are talking about it. So that's like
It's also June.
Yeah, but still, like there's a lot of FCS programs that nobody talks about, especially ones that haven't really done that much.
No, I mean, not only did they hire Brennan Marion, but they made Mike Bibby the basketball coach, and Shaq is the GM, whatever that means. So,
how many FCS programs have had Adam Schefter tweet about them?
And then Doug Gottlieb correct Adam Schefter, and then Adam Schefter dunk on you. Yeah, not many.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, yes, the Sac State stuff is super interesting.
But real quick, like that whole thing, like convincing everybody they have this money and getting someone like Adam Schefter to tweet it out, like that is getting Shams to break the news of the Mike Bibby hire. Like that is the like bluster I'm talking about, the trying to go big type of stuff. That is honestly kind of turning off a lot of other people who make these decisions, because those are not the things that go into that. So we might have news next week on Sac State or not. We can talk about them again, I guess. This is 2 straight episodes, so is what it is.
There you go.
So college football playoff. David, you were there. You apparently avoided a mudslide going from Knoxville to Asheville. Lay it out. First, how was Asheville? I've never been there. I hear it's nice,
a cool place.
But I know they had the hurricane not long ago.
Yeah, I mean, Asheville is still recovering from that. Asheville aside, I'll just tell you, people did not like having to get to the Biltmore. It is not convenient. It's a very historic resort. It's like a attraction. People pay $80 to get access to this very famous Vanderbilt house. Anyway, the actual event was the meetings and stuff were at the Inn, which is like a small boutique hotel on the grounds. People were not super fired up about it. We had commissioners having to spend the night in airports. There were a lot of travel issues.
Really?
Because the CFP meetings were part of the CCA, which is the collection of commissioners
for all of Division
40 commissioners. Sun Belt, America East, the Ivy League, all those commissioners are there. And then the CFP kind of gloms onto that and says, well, we're all in one place. Let's meet and talk about this. So anyway, long story short, there's a ton of issues they have to get to. And there was a lot of discussion about the selection committee. They're talking about changing the protocol. They were introduced to some new metrics about the strength of schedule. They had Sports Source there. They had a mathematician from Google there. They had a bunch of people come talking to them about the committee. Are they overcomplicating picking 16 teams? Hey,
not even
ultimately,
16.
We're at the center of all of this is there is an impasse between the Big Ten and the SEC, who seem to be at completely opposite ends of the spectrum for how to move forward, and neither one of them seems really willing to budge on movement. But this is where the silence from the Big Ten comes in, and that the SEC has kind of been dominating this conversation, and we can lay out kind of where we're at here, Chris, if you want to lay out the options for the future of the playoff.
Before that, by the way, Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner, was not there.
He wasn't. He had hip surgery, and he was Zooming in. So he was in the meetings. The dynamics of all these things are always interesting. How much does that matter? You're
probably not going to make your big decision when one of the two people needs to be there. So
I will say that I wouldn't say that them not having a decision was a surprise. Generally, the vibes coming into the meeting were we might get closer to understanding where the winds are blowing here, but the odds of them making a decision were minuscule at best. But do we want to lay out kind of where we're at here, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, you feel free to go ahead. I mean, Rich Clark talked afterward.
Rich Clark was the only person who talked. None of the commissioners talked on the record. Obviously, there's some chatter that goes on.
Ridiculous.
Yes, it is.
I'll get to that later.
So 12 is still on the table.
I know. I love it.
It's very funny. Basically, Rich is listen, we're nothing. There's a real good chance that nothing could change. I mean, it's a real good chance. But the point is, I think there's an assumption that we're going to 16. And I think we still will. But he's saying, everything's on the table. So keep it as it is. 12 teams, straight seeding. Okay. 14, there's a number of ways to do that. That's obviously still on the table. The most likely scenario, obviously, is the 16 teams. And this is where we get into an issue. The Big Ten certainly prefers the 4-4-2-2. What is it? 4-4-2-2-1-1-3. So 3 at-larges. The G5 gets 1. ACC and Big 12 get 2, and the Big 12, the SEC and Big 10 get 4 bids each. And that would generally, because it makes a ton of sense, although not guaranteed, but almost certainly, lead into changing championship weekend into a play-in tournament. Okay?
Yes.
The Big 10 prefers that model, although they've been very quiet about that. The SEC seems to be leaning toward that model, and then met in Destin, and the coaches kind of swung things a little bit, it seems.
Yep.
Which is rare because usually people don't care what the coaches say.
Yep.
And the SEC seems to be in the camp of the 5 automatic bids, as we have now, plus 11 at-larges. And one of the hinge issues on this is that people are still screaming at the SEC to go from 8 games to 9 games. ESPN has said they will give them more money for the 9 games, but guess what, Chris? The coaches don't love the idea of making their jobs harder, despite the fact that the Big 10 obviously still plays 9 games. So does the Big 12. And so there's a sort of obvious thing here where one team, you could get the 5 and 11, but make the SEC play 9 games. But no one's willing to move off of their spot, essentially.
So we'll start at the 9-game part, because Brett Bielema brought that up too at Wrigley Field for a Illini Chicago Cubs night that a bunch of media went to, and basically said, us Big 10 coaches have voted to agree to continue 9 games and do a Big 10 SEC challenge. He said the SEC coaches voted against moving to 9 and not playing the Big 10. I don't know if that's exactly how it works the way he said it, but the point is the Big 10 wants the SEC to go to 9 games. They think it's unfair. This is something we have heard from the Big 10 for a long time. And for a long time, I dismissed it because no one made the Big 10 and the Pac-12 go to 9 games as they did back in the day. They did it for more television money from their networks. The SEC decided not to do that. The SEC scheduled favorably for its teams to help its postseason chances, which it generally should do because that's the goal of the sport. So, but now when you've gone to a 16-team conference, 8 games is just not tenable. Like, that's just not going to work. And it's creating all kinds of problems with the scheduling. And to Greg Sankey's credit, he wants the SEC to go to 9 games. He has said that, but he doesn't make the decision. It's the schools who make the decision. So that is where that is. The SEC won't go to 9 unless they have guarantees on the playoff, and the Big 10 won't agree to the playoff unless the SEC goes to 9. So it's like, who's going to go first here?
It's a giant game of chicken. And at this point, when there's like so much perception out there that neither one of these teams wants to bend, or neither one of these conferences wants to bend, I don't know how this ends. I really don't. I mean, certainly there's going to have to be some sort of a compromise, but both of these sides are going to have to come out of a room holding hands and saying, hey, we did it. Because Rich Clark did confirm that the Big 10 and the SEC do have to agree.
Yes,
based on
basically
the memorandum of understanding that dropped last year. So they do have to agree. It can't be 10 against 1. It does not matter. It has
because
to be
basically
the
way it was phrased to me was that they both have veto power.
Yes,
is how that is technically why they need to agree, because one of them disagreeing upends the whole thing. And we talked about this on the last episode too, but like, it really is crazy how much changed a couple of weeks ago in Destin, because a lot of the SEC ADs were on board with 4-4-2-2. Like, they talked about it publicly at the last Big 10 SEC meeting. But then the coaches come out and start saying, we don't like this. They think it's kind of against the spirit of the competition. And Greg Sankey's kind of going along with that too. And people in the Big 10 who I've talked to were like, what the heck? I thought we were on the same page with this stuff. And now they're very much not. And now we're at an impasse with an unknown end date, because I think the word, what they call it, like a reset, essentially.
Their reset was the operative term. I mean, they have until December 1st to decide for 2026.
That's when ESPN needs to know.
I think that there is some level of like flexibility on that. Like, I don't know that they're going to they're calling it a drop dead date. They say you have to, but like, we're making up the rules as we go anyway. But they want to have it by fall. Now, I will say, just cards on the table for where I'm at. SEC should go to 9 games, but I also hate the 4-4-2 plan. I hate the auto bids. I love the idea of revitalizing conference championship weekend, but it will never happen without the auto bids. I don't want the auto bids. And I think if you do the auto bids, I think it takes away a ton from the regular season. So as much as I would love to revitalize championship weekend, I don't want that at the cost of auto bids. Granted, again, all of this is living in reality. I'm still an 18 playoff guy. I would be fine if they stuck at 12. But I generally am okay, we're probably going to go to 16, so let's live in the real world here.
By the way, the reason 16 became the operative number after it looked like it was going to be 14 is because it seemed like that was the only number that everybody could agree upon. And the Big 12 and the ACC were like, sure, if SEC Big 10 want to go bigger so you guys get more teams in, then we'll do that. But now they can't agree on that. And it's funny because a couple weeks ago when I was in Orlando at Big 12 meetings and Ralph was in Destin, he got a quote from Greg Sankey about like, could the possibility of 12 happen? And Greg Sankey was like, is there a scenario? Sure, but that's not the ideal one. But we're now in a position where it's not impossible. The 12-team playoff just continues as is. And frankly, I think that's what it should be. I think all these problems that are going to be caused by moving to 16 or 14 or whatever actually go away if you just stick at 12. Like, you don't have to worry about non-conference and stuff like we've just added a bunch of big non-conference games over the last 5 years that are coming up. Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Florida's got some, all because everybody knew the playoff was about to expand and you get some mulligans. And so you want to do the bigger games and get better attendance and all that kind of stuff instead of playing an FCS team, and it's working. And so now if you continue to expand, people think that's going to lead to more better non-conference games, and it might, but then how much do those really matter if the only thing that determines if you get in the playoff or not is your conference record? So that's where I actually I wrote this in January, stick at 12. It doesn't need to be overhauled. We came out of the 12-team playoff thinking there were so many blowouts in the first round. Like, clearly we don't need to expand this thing any further. And then somehow we're just like, yeah, 16 is what it's going to be. Like, making it bigger and bigger is only going to create more problems and more debates. Like, you think that last team in right now is difficult. The farther down you go, the more difficult it is going to be to determine who that last at-large team is. So, like, I just think it creates more problems. So, again, it's still the most unlikely scenario of them all, but I would rather stick at 12. It keeps making the playoff something you really have to earn, and you don't have teams making it in that you don't think deserve to be there, which is what will happen if we go to 16, whether it's a 5+11 or a 4-4-2-2. I mean, between those, would you rather stay at 12?
Yeah, because again, I thought there were teams that didn't need to be in there last year. So yes, I'm fine with it. Again, you're talking to an 18 playoff guy. I've been saying this for years.
Yeah, I know. Look,
Chris, I let's get into some of the perception stuff of this, which is interesting. I'm not going to do the media complaining thing. It's not, nobody cares. There were probably 6-7 reporters that went out to the Biltmore to go out there. Rich Clark talked for 10 minutes. That was the only on the record comments. None of the commissioners would talk the first day. All the commissioners met to talk about a variety of issues, and then the A4 commissioners met after that together to specifically talk about this issue. They scurried out of the meeting, and they all three went into the elevator and went up to the rooms and then left for a dinner after that. They did not speak. Greg Sankey obviously has had a lot to say. He said a ton in Destin. This isn't really that. To some degree, there's something to be said for that. Tony Petitti has been completely silent. The SEC has dominated this conversation. I told you none of the commissioners spoke the whole time, and yesterday, and you were angry about this over text. Where does that come from on this?
You are running a multi-billion-dollar organization, and you can't even speak for yourself in your very highly paid job that could upend the complete direction of the sport. And you just leave it to the director, whom you have power over in terms of Rich Clark does not determine what happens to the playoff. He's doing the business, the logistics, all that kind of stuff. The commissioners have that power. You have all these media come to cover you and give you attention you wouldn't have otherwise, to promote the sport of college football, which is our jobs. And you can't give them anything. I have sat at so many of those meetings, the ones in DFW, and everybody comes out. It's usually me, Heather Dinich, maybe one or two other people. And hey, you want to say something about it? And sometimes they'll give you nothing. They'll indulge you and say something, even if it's not worth it. We talked, we had a good conversation. For them to scurry away and hide in the elevator, to me, is just incredibly childish and a complete joke. This is your job. You are running the sport of college football, and you won't even talk about it. Now, Greg Sankey talked in Destin about this a lot. Yes, Brett Yormark talked about this at Big 12 meetings a lot. Jim Phillips did as well, too. I'm not saying they never talk. The only one who doesn't ever talk is Tony Petitti, but he wasn't there at this meeting. But it's such a bad look on this. It makes everybody watching think you're completely changing the sport of college football, or trying to, just in these back rooms, secretive, not talking about it. Like, this is politics. You have to talk about this publicly. You have to lobby for the cases you want to do. That's what the SEC coaches started doing in Destin, and that's why we started having real conversations about what the playoff could be, because fans are pissed off about all these changes happening in the sport right now, from realignment to transfers to everything, playoff on top of that, and they don't know what's going on. And a lot of the times, these people in charge are not talking about it enough. When you've had media spend a lot of money to get to a difficult place, and to just not at all talk to them, I think is just a dereliction of the duty that is. The NFL has their meetings throughout the year, these various things that become media events, and you talk to media and you talk about the topics that are dominating your sport. College football hates talking about the topics that are dominating its sport. So I really hated the way they apparently treated you guys there.
Well, it was a lot of sitting around.
Yeah, I mean, like, so for people, so now you and I have both sat at these meetings, and literally you were just sitting outside a conference room for hours.
Well, I will say I've done these stakeouts before for various things, and some of these meetings, I've done some meetings in the past. There were very comfortable chairs. There was some furniture in the lobby of the inn at Biltmore, so it was okay. I've done these stakeouts where you're just literally sitting against a wall, like crisscross applesauce at times. We were doing that for the coaches meeting for like an hour and a half at AFCA, where there were no chairs. There were comfortable chairs, I'll give them that. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, this was a cover your bases sort of thing. I think we knew nothing was going to happen here, but I do think you're right. When there's big changes and there's so much money involved, to sort of say,
it's out there now. Come out and talk about the issues. What do you disagree with Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey or whoever? Why can't you get on the same page about this? Like, I've been telling all those commissioners for 6 months to a year and a half, depending on how back you want to, about this expansion conversation. And I've always said, you guys got to talk about this publicly, because it's a bad look if you're doing it in secret. And you're going to have this. You think you can just slide in a complete upheaval of the way the sports postseason works and act like this is just business as usual, the guys in the back of the room determining. No, like, fans want to know what's going on, and it's our job to tell the fans what's going on. That's what your story's about. That's what this podcast is about. And, like, be professionals. The organization has to act like the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is. And it's just a really bad look that this happens almost every playoff meeting. And the Big Ten thought they could get it through without talking. They had their conference meetings. They didn't talk to media. They didn't invite media. I think John Talty might have been the only one who actually went out there, and nobody talked. Tony Petitti didn't talk. And then people in the Big Ten get upset at what happened at SEC meetings. It's like, that's how you create the narrative, man. Like, that's how this works. You have to make your case. And that's what the SEC coaches started to do. And suddenly, this playoff plan that everybody thought was going to happen at this meeting, turns out we're as far apart, apparently, as we've been in a very long time. So,
well, I think part of this is you have to make, if you believe this is what's best for the sport, you have to make that case, right? When we went from the BCS to the 14 playoff, I felt like that was what was best for the sport. It was a very popular decision. There's certainly pockets of people who disagreed with the decision to go to a 14 playoff. I loved it. I didn't think I'd see it in our lifetime. I've been screaming for it for a long time. It wasn't hard to make the case for why this is best for the sport. I suspect, Chris, that the reason we were seeing some of this silence from going from 12 to 16 is because I don't know that everybody necessarily believes it's best for the sport. They have to make money. The house settlement has a factor. And
that's
like, if
nobody,
you really
nobody,
say it with your chest.
Nobody has made the case about why this is better. Some people in the Big Ten have background when the PR people will call you, or off the record when someone will call you. They haven't made the case publicly. That's the whole problem. Like, what is the case? The case is it actually makes more teams be in contention. If you end up in 6th place in the Big Ten, you actually have a shot. There's more to play for there. Like, there is an argument. You could say you don't like the committee or whatever you want to do. That's
Chris,
fine.
What you're describing,
but the Big Ten is not doing that.
Would call devaluing the regular season.
That's what I'm just saying. Like, you can make the case. I wrote the story about how this is like the Champions League in soccer and how that works, and you want to reward the higher conferences. Sure, like, say, hey, it's better to know we're getting this many teams because then whatever. Like, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying there's a case to be made, and the Big Ten is not making it. And when you don't make it, you leave the door open for SEC coaches in the Big 12 and everybody to come in and change the narrative. And now suddenly you're behind on things.
Chris, speaking of Big Ten versus SEC, should we go to our guy?
We're gonna go to, all right. That's it for the media scrum. That is going to take us to the Say What segment.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
And Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt quarterback, had a lot to say on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. For those who don't totally know, Diego Pavia, former New Mexico military quarterback, then went to New Mexico where he would talk a lot. New
Mexico State. You're about to get shot.
So New Mexico State, yes. New Mexico State, yes. New Mexico military to New Mexico State. And when he was at New Mexico State, he peed on the practice field at New Mexico, got in some trouble, but won there, beat Auburn, goes on to Vanderbilt, still doing well, ran out of eligibility, filed a lawsuit, got another year of eligibility. So he's back. However you feel about that specific part, you can be mixed on it. But having someone who says the things that Diego Pavia says is certainly more fun. Here are some of the quotes. I'll read a few of these. Give me your reactions to each one. You want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten, Pavia said. You ignore those calls when talking about transferring, why he went to Vanderbilt instead of the Big Ten. He says, the Big Ten, you have like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State. The SEC, you got all dogs. You really only have 4 games a year in the Big Ten. The SEC, it's like week after week after week. Like, you're going to get beat on. The Big Ten, you're not getting beat on with Purdue, Nebraska.
Tough look, Nebraska. He sounds like Greg Sankey is what he sounds like right now.
He also says you only have to score 7 points to beat Iowa.
Not anymore, Diego. Come on. That's Tim Lester erasure.
By the way, scoring 7 points on Iowa is actually
harder than you think. Yeah.
And then he says, quote, the trenches too in the SEC are just different. Let's think about this. The best pass rushers are from the SEC. Except for Abdul Carter, you'll find like 1 or 2 in the Big Ten. So major shots fired from SEC Big Ten. I'm currently in Big Ten country. I'm in Detroit. You're in Knoxville, Tennessee. You're in the state of Tennessee. We'll get to what he said about Tennessee in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. That was
but this Big Ten SEC conversation coming from the Vanderbilt quarterback. What do you think?
Nebraska, get your gains up. I'm sorry. That's tough. That's tough. That's a stray of all strays for Nebraska there. I mean, listen, Chris, longtime listeners of the pod, we've been on we've been on Diego for years. Diego is our guy. I think we did a whole show about him peeing on the New Mexico practice field. He's nothing if not fearless, deeply entertaining. He does have an Alabama skin on his wall, so there's something to be said for that. It's not the greatest time to pick on the Big Ten. I don't know if he missed the last 2 national championship games. I guess if you're only watching the SEC, you might not have seen it, but it's a tough time to be beating the SEC drum necessarily. Like we've said, the SEC does have the recruiting rankings. They have the NFL draft. All that stuff is true. The national championship games also did happen without the SEC or future SEC members in the last 2 seasons. So I get it, but it was very entertaining. I like guys that have an opinion that want to say something. We just talked about some guys who don't. I like guys that do in the sport. It's very fun.
That goes back to the narrative conversation we had, because I talked to someone in another conference who has been baffled by the Big Ten's communication strategy in general, not just making your case for the playoff, But the fact that you have won the last 2 national championships and you are letting the SEC talk like they run the sport.
Mm-hmm.
You like this is as high as the Big Ten has been in a long time. Ohio State, the NFL people, they're putting out what Michigan did the last 2 years, and yet you're not seeing the Big Ten puff its chest out like that, which is why Brett Bielema did what he did and said what he said. Like, he's someone who's never been afraid to talk, and so he's going to stick up for the Big Ten and do that kind of stuff. So there's that. The second part is, I don't know if Diego Pavia has played or beat a Big Ten team in his career. Do you know the last time Vanderbilt beat a Big Ten team?
I'm going to say 1971.
Lower. 2 more guesses.
Like more recently?
Farther back.
1948.
Close. Lower.
1950. Oh, wait. No, 1940. I'll say 1940 because I don't know where the World War II situation was at Vanderbilt.
1947. They beat Northwestern 3-0. Since then, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's Northwestern, commonly referred to as the Vanderbilt of the Big Ten. Do I have that correct?
Yes. They are. Vanderbilt is 0-7-1 against the Big Ten since that last win in 1947, a 3-0 win against Northwestern. They've actually played Northwestern quite a bit. So look, I think Vanderbilt's a good program. They just beat Alabama. Like, they've got some things to kind of hang their hat on right now. But you can't be the one saying this, man.
But I love that he did. The world, not necessarily the world. I'll say the world could do with fewer of this sort of attitude. The sport of college football needs more Diego Pavia, so I know that for sure.
Yes, I always hate when, and I'm not saying I just did this, but I hate when someone will say something provocative and you'll have people in the media being like, he needs to shut his mouth. He needs to stop talking.
No, he doesn't.
No. Yeah. What are you talking about? We want people to be fun and entertaining. We love Diego Pavia on this show. He gives us
We've been on this.
About. It's fun. You want characters. I'm just saying he's not the best one to be saying this.
He's not.
Compared to some other people. You know, have Mac Jones and what they did to Ohio State, you know, say it or something like that. Look, it's fun. I'm just saying, like, I love they don't play a Big Ten team this year either. So it's like, it's tough.
Well, they could in the bowl game if they get there. I think it goes back to like how you see this sport in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people maybe take the sport a little too seriously, gain maybe a little bit too much identity in the sport in a way that's probably not healthy. And we're probably more mad at Diego Pavia than they needed to be this week. I see the sport as entertainment. It's my favorite television show.
Yes.
Guess what this did? This made games more interesting in the fall. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
We need more of this. We need more people popping off.
Do you think Luke Fickell's putting it on the bulletin board when Wisconsin plays Alabama this year?
I mean, I guess why not? You might as well. Look at what Diego said.
Yes.
Go Diego, go. That's the official.
Everybody in the Big Ten rooting for Wisconsin.
Of a bunch formation. He did, however, fire some shots at the state of Tennessee. Vanderbilt is going to run Tennessee after this year, Pavia said. Like, this is going to be the new staple of college football. It's going to happen here at Vanderbilt. Everyone wants to come to Tennessee because of Nashville. I'm not sure that's true at all. They want to come to Nashville, so Vanderbilt. And then when we have the most money in NIL, again, I'm not sure that's true either. Like, why not come here? We literally just have to win this year, and it'll take care of itself. So a lot of issues with this.
Yeah,
again, I love it.
As the official Tennessee resident of the Bunch Formation podcast, David, what do you think?
I love the talk. Talk all your talk. But again, I've referenced this in the past. If you're going to talk your talk, you have to be correct, okay? I can tell you with certainty that you can't go on the recruiting trail and get the best players in the country and be like, let me tell you about the bars on Broadway. You got to come to Nashville. That recruiting pitch is not hitting. That recruiting pitch is getting slammed out of the park, okay? Respectfully, nobody cares about Nashville. So it's like, nice.
That is
but
not
that's
true.
not a thing.
What do you mean it's not a thing? It's like it's one of the fastest growing places in the country.
Yeah, but you're recruiting 18-year-old kids. You're not recruiting young professionals or country music singers, okay?
That's true.
Yes. It's a very different thing here.
Well, I mean,
it is Vanderbilt. I mean, it's a tough sell.
That one country music star played at UAB or something like that, right? I forget his name.
I mean, again, this is like asking me about minor league baseball. I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say. Okay, and then when we have the most money in NIL, listen, no, you don't. You don't. I don't know what to tell you. Especially when you're talking trash to your rival, who probably is in the top 10 or so in terms of your actual funds for NIL. So, a part of this too is if you're Diego Pavia, okay, you need to be talking your talk and doing it toward like Alabama, who you just beat, right? That's the move. You'd be like, Kalen DeBoer, we're going to get him fired again this year or whatever, okay? I can't wait to watch Feinbaum after we play Alabama again this year. This is what we're talking about. Vanderbilt played Tennessee this year.
Diego Pavia was in that game.
He was in that game. They got out to a 14-0 lead and then got ran out of their own stadium. So, it's context, my guy, context. I love the talk, but if you're going to talk trash, you have to be right.
Talking about Auburn and Hugh Freeze,
yes,
the guy who you keep beating. Like that's.
He's got a lot of cards to play, but we're gonna run Tennessee is not the card, especially if you're talking, you're with the NIL thing. You're literally writing checks that your collective can't cash, literally. So like,
Tennessee has won 6 straight against Vanderbilt. Last year
once Kyle Shermer left, Tennessee's kind of taken back that rivalry. So,
by the way, that country musician who played at UAB, Sam Hunt, is who that was.
I don't know who that
quarterback there.
Okay,
he's
sure.
Vanderbilt
does have a winner of the Bachelorette as an alum. Shout out to Jordan Rogers.
They do. You're not caught up on Love Island, right?
I've never seen an episode of Love Island.
You would love the show. It's so like Jalen Brunson started tweeting about it the other day.
I don't even know how it works.
So Jalen Brunson tweeted something like I can't believe that happened or something like that. Everybody's like, what's Jalen Brunson talking about? And then he like quote tweeted and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm watching Love Island." and then Tommy DeVito said him and a bunch of the players.
That feels on brand.
We're watching Love Island. The problem is we're like almost halfway through the season. It's been like 13 episodes, I think, at this point. So may be hard for you to catch up. I think you should jump in because it's June and we have nothing. There's not a ton to talk about on a college football podcast. But good show. No, there's a former...
I'm still trying to finish Andor, man. Listen, the 2-kid life, I just have very small windows. I got like 6 episodes left of Andor to catch up to. So
good show.
We'll see.
There is a Spanish basketball player on there, but no football players. Look, at some point, I'm going to start talking WWE on this show because they've got former football players doing their thing. So, Diego Pavia, keep talking.
Please do. We love it. Keep it going. I love it.
Just direct it to the areas you should be trash talking.
And be right.
Talk trash about Alabama.
Yes.
Talk trash about Hugh Freeze and Auburn. We love it.
It is crazy. I will say on paper, it is crazy to be the quarterback at Vanderbilt, beat Alabama, and then talk trash about Tennessee, who ran you off the field. Man, come on.
Every part of that sentence is crazy. Remember, Vanderbilt beat Alabama last year, man, for the first time in our lifetimes.
And did not just beat them, like bullied them, ran it down their throat, and had Bama throwing tantrums in the final minutes. Incredible. And yet, you could say, hey, I'm gonna kick Alabama again like Malachi Moore kicked that football. There's so many ways to go. Diego, please just hit us up. We'll give you plenty more trash talk. We'll load you up for media days, and we'll see you in Atlanta, or wherever they're doing it this year. I'm not going to be there.
All right, and with that, it's time to remember some guys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is a segment where we name a former college football player and we go, hey, remember that guy? David, you go first this week.
All right. So I'm going to segue us into our college football video game episode after this, because this guy was a member of one of my favorite teams that I've ever played on this game. In NCAA 06, it was the one with Desmond Howard on the cover.
Great.
That was the one that I took to freshman year of college, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's right. I don't remember. Anyway, it was 05 or 06. Anyway, I played with LSU that year. Jamarcus Russell, Ali Broussard, Dwayne Bowe, and the big man in the middle.
Those are some guys.
Oh, we're remembering some guys here. And in the middle of that, Mr. Glenn Dorsey, dog. You want to? These are the dogs that Diego Pavia is talking about. Guys like Glenn Dorsey. Just a giant defensive tackle, moved pretty fast, just a run stopper of all run stopper. He's your favorite run stopper's favorite run stopper, basically. Glenn Dorsey, awesome. Just a big guy, immovable force in the middle of the defense. Extremely fun to watch. Shout out to Glenn Dorsey. Remember that guy, Chris?
I remember that guy. He was, I think, a 99.
Probably. He should be.
We had him on our honorable mention. He did not make our all EA Sports team. We had Marcus Spears on that line, but we did not have Dorsey. But Dorsey, yes. Absolutely remember him on the inside. Awesome. Great guy to remember. The guy I'm remembering, Bowling Green quarterback Omar Jacobs.
This is Maction before Maction was Maction.
Yes. 2003 to 2005. This was after Urban Meyer, I believe. He had over 4,000 passing yards and 41 touchdowns in 2004. At the time, I don't know if it's still the record, the touchdown interception ratio record from Omar Jacobs at Bowling Green. Those early mid-2000s Bowling Green teams were great. I attended the Motor City Bowl here in Detroit when they played Northwestern. Josh Harris was the quarterback there. But Omar Jacobs, man, he had the hair coming out of the back. Just awesome, MAC-level quarterback at that time. That was, again, that period where I was kind of getting into college football. And you saw Omar Jacobs periodically because you couldn't just see him whenever, but you'd see the highlights of him. And you're like, whoa, this dude... really cool. He got hurt his junior year, didn't play a ton, went pro, didn't turn into much, but man, had a year there at Bowling Green.
I have a question that might be broaching sacrilege, Chris. The MAC getting a lot less fun in recent years. It's getting to be some ugly ball. We need to get. Where's my Logan Woodside? Where's my Logan Woodside at? I feel like it's not nearly as wide open and insane as it has been, 10 years ago.
It is a few reasons. One, it's not the cradle of coaches it used to be. Used to go to the MAC, win, get a Big Ten job or something. That hasn't happened anymore as SEC and Big Ten schools started hiring coordinators instead of head coaching experience. That's why Jason Candle is still where he is, a guy who's won a lot, but it hasn't been able to translate into a bigger job. And then the advent of the portal. Your good players are leaving. Your who was it? Was it Penny Boone, the running back at Toledo, who then went to like Maryland and UCF and Louisville, like all in the span of a couple of years.
That sounds right.
It's hard for the Curtis Rourke. He was tearing it up at Ohio.
He did okay for himself, though. But I think more even stylistically, you could say all the same things about the Fun Belt, but that style of football has gotten a lot more entertaining and a lot more wide open in recent years, whereas the MAC, it feels like a lot of 21-17s in the MAC these days. I want more 45-40s.
Yeah, I mean, you need coaches who are going to do different things out there, and like what Tyson Helton does at Western Kentucky, airing it out like crazy. That's what you kind of want to see. You're not really seeing that like you did back in the day. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger came out of the MAC. Dino Babers was running the Baylor offense back in the day at Bowling Green. So yeah, it's a tough spot. They're just financially, they're not in great spots. And so then it becomes difficult to attract and retain talent. But we'll see. We love the MAC.
Chris, you got one last thing for us?
One last thing here. Sometimes we include this in the podcast, sometimes not. But I saw a post from our good friend Bruce Feldman on Blue Sky. He's at the Elite 11 quarterback camp. These are the best of the best high school quarterbacks. gonna read you some of the names of these players, David, and just give me a reaction on the Gen Z name scale. Give me like a 1 to 5. All right, first one, Bo Bentley.
That sounds like a villain in a Disney Channel football movie.
I like it. Probably pretty high though. 5 is high, so probably put that as like a 4.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, Faison Brandon.
So I've struggled with this one. He's coming to Tennessee. He's one of the better quarterbacks in this class. I'm going to call him Brandon Faison many times. I've ever since he committed, I'm like, was that a typo? It's very confusing to me. Maybe I'll get it. I mean, I was able to get Iamaliava, but we're going to get a Brandon Faison at some point. Shout out to Donald Faison also.
Where are we putting that 1 to 5 on the Gen Z scale?
That's like a 3.
Faison.
That's like a 3.
All right. Number Bryson Beaver.
So he's going to Oregon, right? He just decommitted from somewhere, and he's going to Oregon. Did I see that correctly?
I think he was committed to Boise. I think he was.
And he's going to Oregon now at some point. Either way, he needs to either beat Oregon State or play for Oregon State. I need it.
Right, you're so close.
Really? Listen, I don't want you to have a disappointing career necessarily, but maybe if it doesn't work out at Oregon, you look up the road a little bit to Corvallis, see what's there. I'm just saying, for my sake, Bryson, do it.
We got I may not say this right, but Helaman Kasuga.
Yeah.
It's an extremely Mormon name. He's from Utah. He plays in Provo. Very much that. And then last one, Dia Bell. Yeah. Fun fact. The son of Raja Bell.
Oh, I've heard about this. Yeah, that's a tough
Talk about remembering some guys.
The original Kobe stopper. All right.
Yeah, the Kobe stopper.
I will say though, you left out the most Gen Z of all the names. There's since we're not talking women's basketball and there's no Brayleys or Brileys or anything, we've got a Jet Tamala.
Jet with 2 T's.
Jet with 2 T's. If you're outside the state of Texas, that is as Gen Z as it gets. Inside the state of Texas, it's slightly less Gen Z.
These are all very good quarterbacks. We're probably going to be talking about some of these guys in a few years on this show. But I someone who doesn't follow recruiting very closely, I saw these names pop up, and I was like, it's like when you read like the BYU roster, and there's like 7 kids named Braden spelled like 5 different ways, like Bunky Perkins posts one of the rush lists from one of the Ole Miss frats. We've reached that age, man. We've reached that older age where we start making jokes about the names of the younger people. But look, we're a Chris and a David. That's timeless right there.
Can we get some Rons back? Can we get like a Chuck in the mix? Where are we?
Man, we need a Chuck.
If
we need a Chuck.
Find me a Chuck in the class of 2026. We'll have him on the show. How about that?
All right. So that's going to do it for part 1 of this episode. Again, next week, we're going to have, as long as everything it's set, unless it falls through, an interview with the college football referee. If you have questions you want answered to a referee, send them to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. We will ask him. Looking forward to that. Going to have a lot of fun with that. If you want to know more about the college football video game stuff, check out part 2.
We're coming back.
The embargo on gameplay is up, or will be up, on Friday. So we will have part 2 of that episode. So we're going to go over there and start recording that, talking about the video game there. But that'll do it here for now. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vanini. We will talk to you in a couple hours, maybe. See ya.